Here at Unexplained Reality, we support our troops and veterans 100%. Our family has a number of veterans, and my son-in-law is active duty serving our wonderful country. We have come across a great veteran-owned company called Awesome Bad Clothing. They have some very cool t-shirts and hats, and best of all, they are veteran-owned. So go check them out at awesomebadclothing.com and let them know you heard about them from Unexplained Reality. And when you go to checkout, type Unexplained in the coupon code box to get 10% off. Good evening, and welcome to Unexplained Reality, the podcast about the weird, strange, and unexplained, but real. We are delighted to have you with us. Please grab your favorite beverage, sit back, and enjoy. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Unexplained Reality. I'm one of your hosts, Brian Quinn, and with me is my son,
Harrison Quinn, as always.
Yes, the great Harrison.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully everybody's having had a good New Year's Day today and wrapped up your 2018 just fine, and everybody's safe and happy. We've been doing good. We've been busy. Got Christmas out of the way.
Yep.
Busy time of the year, so hopefully we can get back to putting out some episodes. If you have a story or encounter, you can reach us at unexplainedreality@yahoo.com. You can also get us, just recently added our emails to our website, so you can get us at brian@unexplainedreality.com or harrison@unexplainedreality.com. And if you want to reach out and have an encounter or an experience you'd like to share, you can also get us on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Come follow us, share with us, friend us, all that good jazz. So hopefully everybody's been doing good. Harrison, you enjoying the break?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, mine's over tomorrow. Back to the grind. Anyways, that's how it goes. That's how it goes. You'll understand one day. You have any, no news? Nothing to add? Any thoughts you want to just share? What'd you get for Christmas? That kind of cool stuff.
I mean, I got some cool stuff for Christmas, but I got some money mainly, and then I bought a telescope. That was really interesting. Yeah. So now I've been waiting to use it on the night sky, but
it's been raining ever since.
It's been overcast for 5 days in a row now, so yeah. It's about the worst time of the year to buy a telescope.
Yeah.
And of course, it's not overcast snowing; it's overcast raining, and it's humid in South Carolina. It's like 70 degrees today.
Oh yeah, so it's ridiculous. We could almost swim today.
Honestly, yeah.
If the pool water was up, we would be in the pool.
Yeah,
because it's ridiculously warm. You got some cool books?
Yeah, I got
Christmas.
Astrophysics for People in a Hurry by Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I also got The Elegant Universe. I haven't started on that one yet, but I'm waiting to finish Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. But that one's been pretty good so far. It's been pretty interesting.
Cool.
Definitely like it, yeah. I would recommend it a lot if you're interested in astrophysics, astronomy, astrology, cosmology, anything in that field, or if you just want to, pick up a good book and read some interesting stuff, It's got a lot. And learn something along the way. It's a really, really interesting book. It's got a lot of stuff that I never even, some really important, interesting stuff that I never even knew about, But
that's cool. I might have to read that after you get done with it.
Yeah.
Check it out. It'll take me forever though, but slow reader. So that's good. Yeah, we didn't. Well, we're adults. We don't get cool stuff anymore. We got the Roomba though.
Stupid.
The Roomba and the Google Home, and tied them together. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's fun. So that's cool. But anyways, I have this one story about. I actually read about this like last week, I think it was, but it's about an Australian man who films this yowie creature. Man in Australia shared footage of what some believe could be an ape-like creature. The video was taken at night, and it's about 1 minute long, and it shows him like videoing a wooded area with a light on, and you see a pair of red eyes between some trees, and it's kind of creepy. It's got a kind of creepy factor, but it's pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, you can't really tell what it is. It could be anything, but the eyes look pretty far apart. They're definitely red, and they're moving around. There's no blinking or anything, but you can see them. But that's pretty cool. And that actual article, I've seen it on a couple different sites, but I think the easiest one to get to is cryptozoologynews.com. And look at it there if you want, are interested. Anyways, tonight we're going to get right to it because it's been a while since we have put out anything. And I think our last one was the Little People Hunters from Montana, those guys.
Yep.
Since then, they put out their first video, which was pretty cool. And I think they were supposed to be doing an investigation at their school or something over the holidays. So I haven't seen anything posted about that video being out yet, but you can go follow those guys on Instagram and on their YouTube channel. Tonight, we're going to talk about the Appalachian Trail. The Appalachian Trail, or the AT, is it's called in the hiking world, is a trail which is 2,175 miles long. And it stretches, practically all the way up the eastern coast of the U.S. The trail starts in the mountains of North Georgia at Springer Mountain, and wraps up at Mount Katahdin in Maine. The journey along the trail, goes across 14 states. The Appalachian Trail was the dream of an American forester by the name of Benton McKay. And he came up with this idea in 1921. And that's, when the first section opened up in New York was 2 years after, he came up with this idea. The AT is filled with, what some would consider magical experiences, I guess. And it has amazing views of vistas and wonderful wildlife viewing. And also, encounters with other hikers. And, the list goes on and on. If you're, a hiker and you're like nature, it's just an experience to go hike the AT. And not to mention it's, a serious dedication to be able to do it because it takes months to be able to walk, 2,100 miles to be able to be out of work or school or whatever you may, be into in whatever stage of life you're in. But anyways, the trail meanders over and along ridge lines, down into valleys, and over or through waterways. It is rugged, and most of the time is a pretty desolate place. A through hike of the AT typically takes between 5 and 7 months, although it has been completed in as little as 50 days. There are two types of hikers on the AT typically, and those are through hikers and sectional hikers. The through hikers have the desire to complete the hike straight through, only breaking for rest. Sectional hikers usually plan their traverse of the trail in segments, depending on the amount of time they have to be on the trail. These hikers usually get dropped off at one of the points on the trail and hike to another designated point where they have pre-planned a rendezvous with, someone who will take them back to civilization. And even though, the trail crawls through vast wilderness areas, most of which are very remote, there are points where the trail gets close to towns or actually bisects towns. So there are opportunities for hikers to get off the trail for a night and take up a room in a hotel or grab a good meal along their trek. And, along with that, even some will hike out of their way to get to towns or whatever to do these things, just to get a little break from it. But regulars on the AT usually have trail names, which, adds to the lure of the Appalachian Trail.
Some examples are Birdman, Chili Willy, Tiny Dancer, etc. There's a whole, it's just amazing some of the names that people come up with for their trail name. There are a number of characters that can be found on a regular basis along the AT. Many people who have hiked along the trail have stories of their encounters with these regular hikers with their crazy cool trail names. However, many also have stories of experiences and encounters that they just can't, explain. From what appear to be ghostly interactions to sightings of animals that are yet to be formally discovered, the Appalachian Trail is not exactly the ideal location to have a creepy encounter, especially if you're in one of those remote areas. And if you are lucky enough to have a malevolent encounter, while traversing the remote AT, the best you can hope for really is to merely have a frightening experience and not something worse. I got a couple stories that I picked up online to go along with this episode, and the first one here is called, it was actually posted on November 1st, 2013. So this article comes from a Reddit post on, I think, user Six String Shadows. That was the name of the account, but it says someone was stalking me in the middle of the night while camping in the backwoods. This was from November 1st, 2013. It says a few years back, my girlfriend and I, having hiked several other parts of the Appalachian Trail, decided we want to give the southern portion of Virginia Trail a shot. It is about 166 miles long and runs through George Washington and Jefferson National Forest from Roanoke County to Petersburg in Giles County. This is definitely one of the more remote and less traveled parts of the trail, which is exactly what we were looking for. We gathered our gear and made our way to the start of the Virginia Creeper Trail to begin our journey. We had planned our journey to end at Damascus and figured that by the time we got there, we would be more than ready to get home to our own beds. It was early October, and the changing of the leaves and colors were amazing. The air was crisp and cool, perfect hiking weather with beautiful scenery. The majority of the trip was pretty uneventful, just your typical hike. But our last couple of nights, it was where things got weird. On this portion of the trail, you're supposed to camp on the trail or a designated shelter. We didn't really want to run into other people and didn't want anyone coming up on us in the middle of the night. We decided to ignore those suggestions and find our own little spot of off the trail. A little searching around, and we found a spot a little ways off the trail in the middle of a clearing. It was perfect. We set up camp, cooked some food, talked for a while, then snuggled up and went to sleep for the night. Somewhere around 2 a.m., I was awoke by my girlfriend shaking me awake, telling me, "Get your gun. Someone is outside walking around our tent." She informed me that she woke up to what sounded like someone right outside the tent running a knife or something along the side while circling us. When hiking, I carry a 1911 and a judge with me. You never know exactly who or what you might run into when on such a long hike in a remote location. I got the judge out of my pack, and then we sat silently listening for any sounds. A few minutes of nothing but the breeze blowing through the trees, and then I heard it. Snap, crunch, snap. Someone or something walking in the woods behind our tent. I got the flashlight and silently made my way out of the tent. Our fire had went out, so it was nearly pitch black, illuminated only by the dim glow of the October moon. I told my girlfriend to stay put while I checked it out. I didn't flick the flashlight on right away so as to not give away that I was out of the tent and have it become a shining beacon of my location. Instead, I waited to hear more noises. After a few minutes, snap, crunch, crack. It sounded like it was bipedal based on the way the steps were paced. I turned on the flashlight and flooded the area with light. I thought I saw someone move behind a tree. I yelled out and told them to go away and that I was armed. I kept the light on the area with my gun drawn and slowly approached towards the area where I thought I saw the figure. Then from my right, I hear what sounds like someone running away from through the woods. I spin and face my light that way, and then from the original spot hear who or whatever was there take off in the woods. There's no way I'm giving chase, so I return to the campsite. I tell my girlfriend about what happened, and I end up sitting guard outside the tent in the darkness until daybreak. In the morning, I looked around a bit for signs of who or whatever it was, and I discovered a blueprint in some soft, moist dirt not far from our tent. It wasn't mine, and it wasn't my girl's. This freaked me out as it confirmed that someone, perhaps more than one, was skulking around our tent in the dark. I kept it to myself because I didn't want to freak my girl out any more than she already was. At this point, we were pretty deep in and still had 2 days left. That day, we walked a little faster than normal and covered as much ground as possible. When it came time to set up camp, I found a spot near a cliff where we could place the tent in a small overhang and prevent anyone from coming up behind us. The whole day up to this point, I had a feeling we were being followed. I had no confirmation of this, as I hadn't seen or heard anyone else, but it was just a gut feeling. We set up camp, made some food, then retreated to the tent. I gave my girl the 1911, and I kept the judge right next to me, and I assured her that if I slept at all, it would be with one eye open. After a while, she drifted off to sleep. I stayed awake, listening to the sounds of the woods at night. I was awake for a few hours, just waiting to see if anything was going to happen. At some point, I guess my exhaustion caught up with me, and I drifted off. I awoke sometime later to what sounded like someone going through our stuff outside the tent. I grabbed my gun and woke my girlfriend, shushing her to be quiet. From the faint glow of the fire, I could see someone's silhouette against the tent. There was really someone out there. I yelled out to them something along the lines of, I'm not going to say it because it's got some cuss words. Basically said, we're armed and get out of here. They dropped what they were doing and bolted. I came out of the tent, gun drawn and ready to shoot someone. Our stuff was strewn all about. They had rummaged through quite a bit of our stuff. I walked to the edge of the woods in the direction whoever was out there had fled. There was a creek nearby, and I walked to the edge where there was a small trail running alongside it. Down the creek, I could see a light. It looked like a lantern the way it flickered. Then I saw 3 more emerge from the other side of the woods. I told my girlfriend to start packing up whatever she could and that we were leaving now. We packed up everything of value, left the tent and a few other items, and headed back onto the trail in the middle of the night. I kept hearing people talking off in the woods and hearing branches snap for quite some ways. I kept looking behind us every few seconds to make sure nobody was coming up on us. It was completely nerve-wracking. If something happened, we were still a long ways from anywhere and quite literally on our own. Since we hadn't seen another hiker the entire time we had been out there, I really felt we were in serious danger. We had been walking for quite some time when I heard something in the woods behind us. As we rounded a corner, I turned around and saw someone step out onto the trail and just stand there watching us. It was just as the sun was coming up and barely any light. I couldn't make out any features, just the silhouette. I stopped and looked at them for a second and asked them who they were and what they wanted. They just stood there, silent, watching us, and then turned and walked back into the woods. We picked up the pace and kept going, looking back every so often. We didn't see them again, but my gut told me they were still there for quite a ways. We eventually reached the end of the trail and got to where we had parked my girlfriend's car, extremely exhausted. We made it out of Virginia woods without becoming a meal for a clan of cannibalistic inbred hillbillies, which is what I pictured happening in my head the whole time. I have no idea who they were or what they wanted. Maybe it was someone just messing with us. Maybe it was really a clan of deformed hillbillies who were hunting us. I will never know because I will not be returning to find out. That's super creepy. Creepy story. I wouldn't want to, I've been in the woods and had a lot of stuff happen, camping, stuff come up, sniff your head while you're sleeping in a tent. We did have somebody shoot a high-powered rifle one time, maybe like 20, 30 feet from our tent. We're sleeping up in Pisgah one time. And we were probably 10, 15 miles from the nearest main road, and, so it's nerve-wracking, but we've never had nothing like that. People blatantly come in and start digging through your stuff. But, this next story was a pretty well-known story, and it's of a young couple named Jeff and Molly that went missing on the AT. Jeff Hood and Molly LaRue met in Kansas. They were working with troubled teenagers for a church-sponsored organization. They would take these kids on backcountry adventures to broaden their horizons and take their young minds, off of their troubles. Jeff was originally from Tennessee, and as would be expected, he was patient and very friendly. Molly was artistic and energetic and a year younger than Jeff. Both Jeff and Molly loved outdoors and both had extensive experience being in the backcountry, both for pleasure and for work. After learning of an impending layoff from their current positions, Jeff and Molly decided to knock out a bucket list item. On June 4th, 1990, Jeff and Molly left Mount Katahdin in Maine, heading southbound on the AT. And that's another thing with AT hikers. You have the section hikers, you have the through hikers, and then you have the southbound hikers. So I think most people hike from Georgia to Maine, but there are people that hike from Maine to Georgia. I don't know what. I guess it's just a preference thing. There might be some different challenges. I'm not sure. Basically, it's the same trail. So, but anyways, in 1990, personal communications came in the form of landline connected phones. Cellular phones were still in the form of a boxy-looking bag wired into your car, and the internet would not be offered publicly for another 2 years. So communications along the AT was handled via logbooks at shelters and via face-to-face exchanges, with fellow hikers along your hike. Through these logbook entries, it was very obvious that Jeff and Molly, as anybody walks the AT, had good days and bad days. However, was also very obvious that they were having a blast. They were making the most of it. They were in their element, and being so, as is the custom on the AT, they gave themselves trail names. Molly took the trail name Nalgene, and Jeff's was Clevis. And this is how they signed all their log entries. And through these entries and interactions with the couple, a couple of things became evident. First, they were upbeat, happy, almost to the point as one fellow hiker referred to them as being obnoxiously happy. Second, they were very slow movers. However, this wasn't because they hiked slow. No, it was because they were making the most out of their trip. They were taking it all in. They would stop to inspect critters they encountered along the way, check out the foliage, or just to grab some pictures. They were, enjoying themselves, which, is the purpose of it. On September 5th, 1990, a fellow by the name of Paul David Cruz left South Carolina. Cruz was 38 years old and worked as a farmhand on a tobacco farm. He bought a Greyhound bus ticket and headed north. Cruz was recalled as being a quiet person who liked to disappear for periods of time without explanation. On September 6, 1990, he arrived in Winchester, Virginia. From there, he hitchhiked through parts of West Virginia, Maryland, and eventually landed in Pennsylvania. On September 11th, he was in a library in East Berlin, Pennsylvania, inquiring about hiking maps. The librarian whom he had spoken with gave him directions to a different library branch and asked him to sign the library's guest book. He signed it as Casey Horn. In July 1986, Cruz was in a bar in Bartow, Florida. He was in need of a ride home and was offered such by a woman. That woman was later found dead on an old railroad track, and Cruz showed up at his brother's house in North Carolina driving the dead woman's car. Cruz's brother got him out of town just before the police found the vehicle and the incriminating items in the car. Now Cruz was wanted for murder, and now we know why he was quietly working as a farmhand in South Carolina. However, Cruz's troubles began long before the murder of this woman in Florida. Cruz's life pretty much had been a wreck since his childhood. He was abandoned and then adopted. He ran away repeatedly, joined the Marines, got married, tried to kill himself, went AWOL, got kicked out of the Marine Corps, and then he got divorced. He got married to his second wife and threatened her by holding a bayonet to her throat. That resulted in divorce. No shock there. This all culminated with the murder of the woman in Florida. So anyways, Jeff and Molly were continuing their trek southward. They were approaching the halfway mark for their hike, and we're looking forward to a reunion with family at Harper's Ferry to celebrate, making it to the halfway point. On the afternoon of September 11th, they enjoyed pizza with some fellow hikers at a pizza place in Duncannon. After they finished, Molly and Jeff went to the Doyle Hotel and enjoyed a night on a mattress. While at the hotel that night, they contacted family and firmed up plans for their meeting at Harper's Ferry. It was believed that during this meetup, it was their intent to share their engagement with family. On the afternoon of September 12th, after running some errands in town and having lunch with some of Molly's relatives, they finally headed back onto the trail heading up towards Cove Mountain. It is believed that Jeff and Molly arrived at the Thelma Marks shelter sometime between 5 p.m. and 6 p.m. that evening. Sunset would have come just an hour or so after they arrived. However, due to the way this shelter was situated in the shade of the mountain, sunset would have come quicker, for them. So Cruz arrived at the AT on September 11th. He was spotted walking along a main road that ran through the Cumberland Valley of Pennsylvania. This 16-mile section of road acts as the AT on this section. It just so happened that at this time, some volunteers who helped maintain the trail were working in the area and witnessed Cruz. So, the trail is not just all trail all the way up. There are parts where it overlaps and it, you walk down the side of a road as part of the trail, or, like that. A path runs along the side of a trail. So that's what they're talking about here. Since he was encountered on a paved road that was very close to a major highway, it was thought that he was probably a hitchhiker. However, hours later, he was seen on the AT and he was described as having an evil aura to him. Also unnerving about him was that he was very dirty looking, and he was not wearing what you would expect a person hiking the AT to be wearing. He had on a flannel shirt, jeans, and combat boots. He had a bag on his back and 2 Marlboro gym bags. Sometime after Jeff and Molly arrived at the Thelma Marks shelter, Cruz arrived there too. What transpired is not really understood, since Cruz has refused to elaborate. However, the result is very definite. On the trail, through their log entries, Jeff and Molly, or should we say Nalgene and Clevis, had gathered quite the following among the southbound hikers trailing them. In fact, another couple by the name of Biff and Cindy Bowen were hot on the trail of the happy couple and planning a rendezvous with Jeff and Molly at Thelma Marks. Biff and Cindy had been hiking behind Jeff and Molly for almost 3 months. They had planned on celebrating Biff's soon-to-be birthday at Thelma Marks. Biff and Cindy approached the Thelma Marks shelter from the rear. As they did, they recalled it was very quiet. What they found was Jeff in what appeared to be a sleeping position in the shelter with no evidence of anything more. In contrast, Molly was on the other side of the shelter laying face down in a pool of blood. Biff and Cindy raced back down to Duncannon to notify police. Over the next few hours, police worked under harsh conditions trying to get supplies and implements they needed up on the trail to the Thelma Marks shelter to perform a proper investigation and give justice to Jeff and Molly. In the meantime, a hiker found an empty red Marlboro gym bag and a note from a library at the Darlington shelter. Now they had a name. Also during the investigation, the AT volunteer who had encountered Cruz down on the paved road gave a description of him to the police. The other red Marlboro gym bag was found at the Thelma Marks shelter. Jeff's iconic mammoth green Gregory pack was missing. As news spread of the tragic and senseless killing that had taken place on the AT, the family of hikers passed along the news up and down the trail. One of these hikers set out to help search for the killer. He ran across Cruz and recognized Jeff's pack that he was now wearing. He alerted authorities on a bridge crossing the Potomac River. Federal park rangers took Paul David Cruz into custody. Though a trial is a constitutional right, there was no way Cruz was getting out of these murders. When he was caught, he was wearing Jeff's pack, boots, and watch. He also had with him the murder weapons. His DNA was linked to Molly's rape. He was convicted and sentenced to death by lethal injection. That's just... I read that a couple different places on when I was researching this, and that was just horrible. Nobody should have to go through that. That's crazy. This next story about the AT, we've actually talked about this before when we did the Great Smoky Mountains, the missing people of the Smokies episode. And this is about Trini Lynn Gibson, and this happened October 8th, 1976. She went missing from Andrews Ball, which is near Clingman's Dome, which is actually right on the AT. Trini was on a school field trip with her high school. There were a total of about 40 students, and they were broke up into multiple groups. They were hiking from Clingman's Dome parking area to Andrews Ball. On the way back to the parking area at about 3 p.m., Trini was witnessed stopping in the trail and bending over to look at something by a flat rock. Supposedly, she stepped off of the trail and was never seen again. The group she had been walking with stopped to take a break, and she walked on alone ahead of them. One of her friends and a teacher had witnessed her stop and bend over to look at whatever grabbed her interest. Her friend claims she looked away for a minute. When she looked back, Trini was gone. She immediately started calling for her and got no response. The section of trail where Trini went missing is described as being steep and having drop-offs on both sides of the trail. Search and rescue was immediately brought in and began searching the area. Dogs were brought in to search for Trini, and it is reported that the dogs tracked her scent for about 1.6 miles back to the main road. Supposedly at the point on the trail where she had went missing, cigarette butts were discovered and the remains of what appeared to be a fairly fresh beer. Matching cigarette butts were also found at the road where her scent was tracked to. There was also some details about her hiking, primarily with one young man who she eventually borrowed a jacket from since he had not, dressed warm enough for the mountain hike. Or she had not dressed warm enough for the mountain hike. This young man was interviewed in regards to her disappearance. Apparently, Trini's comb, which she supposedly was never without, was found in this young man's car. This might be explained by the fact that she had put her comb in his jacket while she was wearing it. However, she was reported to be wearing that jacket when she went missing, so that kind of shuts down that theory. There were other reports of her being harassed by another male student. However, he was supposedly at school while they were out on this field trip. It is interesting to note that though this student that harassed her had reportedly broken into her house 2 years prior to Trini's going missing, and at the time of the break-in, Trini's mother had shot the boy in the foot. This young man was then sentenced to a reform type of school. Some reports say that the search for Trini was called off by the end of October 1976. However, other reports claim they continued to search for Trini for several more months. In an interview years later, Trini's father stated that they believe Trini was abducted. The interesting thing about Trini's case is the fact that there was a recent case that was very similar. Mitzi Sue Susan Clements, 53, of Cleves, Ohio, went missing on September 25th, 2018. You probably heard about this. It was all over the news about her going missing from Clingman's Dome with her daughter. But anyways, Mitzi was hiking with her 20-year-old daughter on a trail near Clingman's Dome. Mitzi and her daughter were hiking on the Forney Ridge Trail. They had hiked out to Andrews Bald, which is the same one where Trini was at with her school, and were on their way back to Clingman's Dome parking lot. They were about a quarter of a mile from Andrews Bald because her daughter wanted to go on to the observation tower at Clingman's Dome, and she was hiking faster than her mother. They agreed that she would go on ahead and ahead of her mother. Then they would meet back up at the parking lot. However, Mitzi never arrived. And on the evening of October 2nd, 2018, the body of Mitzi Sue Clements was found. So she went missing on September 25th. Her body was found October 2nd, so it's roughly a week or so. Anyways, her body was found 2 miles west of Clingman's Dome and 3/4 of a mile south of the Appalachian Trail. The thing I found interesting about this is that this discovery of Mitzi, she was last seen at Andrews Bald, the same general area where Trini Gibson was, had disappeared. Now Andrews Bald is approximately 2 miles south of Klingman's Dome. So she was found 2 miles due west of Klingman's Dome and 3/4 of a mile south of the AT. The AT runs almost due west coming away from Klingman's Dome. And if you follow that ridge line, it basically is following a ridge line there. So in that area, once you step south off of the AT, you're heading downhill. So if she had left the trail near Andrews Bald, you first have to ask, why? And the second thing you have to ask is, was she equipped to cross the terrain to go where her body was found? It seems highly unlikely considering the elevation drops and rises, not to mention there's creeks she would have to cross. If she had gone this way, something would have caused her to do so. If she stayed on the trail heading the way she was heading, it would have taken her right up to Klingman's Dome. So, it's an interesting case, and I have not heard any results of an autopsy or anything, how she passed. But when I heard about this case and remembering the Trini case, there's some correlations there that kind of went missing about the same area because they were both going to Andrews Bald. They're probably on the same trail headed back to Klingman's Dome when that happened. The next story I have about the AT is about a place called Peters Mountain, Virginia, which is actually supposedly a secret government base. It's interesting that because at this location there are signs, warning of no trespassing, the typical stuff you would expect. People who live in the area claim there's lots of white vans and tractor trailers with covered loads entering the site. They enter, they're in there for a while, and then they come out. The covered trailers are empty. Lots of encounters in the area with unmarked military-looking personnel with no markings, but very militaristic and directing people to stay away from the area and not come back or get out. People that live in the area have also said at night the top of the mountain lights up with blue lights. And there's lots of vehicles driving around, and it almost appears that they're driving around aimlessly. They're not really doing anything except for driving around and looking like they're doing something. And the interesting thing also is this property is officially listed as being owned by AT&T. However, it is listed as vacant residential property. It's located in Albemarle County, Virginia. And in 2007, 2013 to 2014, building permits were issued to AT&T for the site, which the total of those building permits totaled $61 million spent on these projects. It's interesting since this is listed on record as being a vacant residential property worth very little value, but they spent $61 million on it. Weird. Some believe there are a series of underground bunkers around the U.S., and this location is just one of those, and it is very evident from satellite images that there is indeed an underground entrance, big enough at least for a car, if not something bigger. So if you look at that on Google Earth, you can actually see it. It looks like kind of on the right side. It looks like you can see the overshadowing, like something is an opening there. In the 1960s, AT&T built a number of underground communications hubs around the U.S. in case of a nuclear war, and this is believed to be one of those hubs. It is believed, by people that believe in this, they believe that in case of a natural disaster, that Peters Mountain is where U.S. intelligence personnel will retreat to continue their part of the government continuity. So that would be, just a plan to keep things going after a catastrophe. AT&T registered 2 industrial business radio communication licenses with the FCC for the Peters Mountain site. However, those licenses were due to expire in 2014, but were canceled in 2012. There was also an assessment of the property in 1997, but other than that, there is no record of when that site was first acquired or started. Supposedly, after the 9/11 attacks, anti-aircraft weapons were taken to the top of this mountain, and yet they were never removed. So obviously, they're still there.
To me, the Appalachian Trail is one of the great wonders of our country. It has lots of beauty and adventure to offer, obviously, both on a natural level and on a physical and spiritual level. However, there's a mystique and creepiness to it as well, as we just seen. And these are just, a small subset of the stories out there about the Appalachian Trail. There are many, 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 many more. We're just skimming the surface. It's a fascinating place. This is our show for tonight. You've been listening to Unexplained Reality. If you have had an encounter or an experience, or you just want to reach out and say hey, you can do so by emailing us at unexplained.reality@yahoo.com, or contact us via our website at www.unexplainedreality.com. We are also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So come friend us, follow us, and like us on those social media platforms. We are also on YouTube, so please go subscribe to our channel. And please rate and review our podcast on iTunes or wherever you listen. And also, we would like to thank the podcasts that we listen to that have inspired us to start this show. OK Talk, Sasquatch Chronicles, Into the Fray, The Confessionals, The Cryptid Factor, Expanded Perspectives, The Graylian Report, Monsters Among Us, and Mysterious Universe.
Tell us a story, Ranger Chet.
Oh, okay. I could tell you about the time I locked eyes with Sasquatch, or about my brush with the elusive Chupacabra. Then there was that encounter with the Mothman.
Yeah, tell us about the Mothman.
Of course, I once saw a lake monster and a sea monster on the same day.
Wow!
That's not even taking all the ghosts, aliens, and UFOs into account.
You've seen all that as a park ranger?
No, son. Those are the creatures I've encountered in my cryptid crate.
What's a cryptid crate?
Cryptid Crate is a monthly subscription box that arrives on your doorstep each and every month. It's filled with various cryptozoology and paranormal themed items such as t-shirts, hats, art, media, and other collectibles.
I want a cryptid crate. Yeah, I want one too.
You can get yours by visiting www.cryptidcrate.com. Sign up is quick and easy, and shipping is always free. I can't wait to get my Cryptid Crate, but for now, how about that story?
Old is where I like to go when I'm feeling like I'm feeling right now. When time was moving slow and this old road to hold wasn't quite so long and loud. Sometimes I just need a little taste of the past, back when my only worry was running out of gas. I dream about the hours underneath that water tower, way before I had a care in the world. On the hood of Tommy's old Chevette, a six-pack and some cigarettes, and we lied about how far we'd get with girls. The drive-ins are now a parking lot, and the Walmart took our favorite spot, but I love looking back across the years. My mind is all still crystal clear. I can almost see that water tower from here. I remember the night when Tommy had a fight with his high school sweetheart Beth. Cut the lock and climbed up to the top, scared the whole town half to death when he saw how far it was from up there to the ground. The fire department had to come and help him down. I dream about the hours underneath that water tower, way before I had a care in the world. On the six-pack and some cigarettes, and we lied about how far we'd get with girls. country in the world. On the hood of Tommy's old Chevette, a six-pack and some cigarettes, and we lie about how far we get.